This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
Today, we're going on a bit of a historical detective mission. We're going to dive into one of the most important texts in Western philosophy and uncover a mystery that's been hiding in plain sight for more than 2,000 years. You probably heard this a million times, right? Aristotle is the guy. He's the bedrock, the starting point for pretty much all of Western thought. But what if that bedrock has a massive crack running right through it? Because here's the bombshell question we're exploring. What if Aristotle's single most famous, most influential idea, the unmoved mover from his book The Metaphysics, wasn't actually written by him at all? Okay, let's get into it. To even understand this mystery, you first have to see why this unmoved mover idea sticks out like a sore thumb from everything else Aristotle ever wrote. It just doesn't fit. So what is this unmoved mover? Well, it's this huge, cosmic, almost godlike idea. It's a perfect, eternal being that causes all the change and motion in the universe, but it doesn't move itself. It's the ultimate cause at the very top of everything, making the whole cosmic show run. And this is where the red flags go up. On one side, you have the unmoved mover from this one section, Book Lambda. It's all top-down, giving you one big final answer that basically ends the conversation. But then you have the entire rest of Aristotle's work, which is all about bottom-up investigation, about digging into things to find their own internal causes. The unmoved mover sounds an awful lot like Plato, the very guy Aristotle built his career on arguing against. It's a total anomaly. So how on earth do we explain this? Well, the first clue is realizing that the image we all have in our heads of who Aristotle was is completely wrong. You can picture it, right? Aristotle, the lone genius, wandering around in a toga, stroking his beard, having profound thoughts, and then carefully writing them down in these perfect, finished books. Yeah, that whole image is a myth. The reality is way more interesting. It's closer to this number, 100. That's roughly how many people were working at his research institute, the Lyceum. See, the Lyceum wasn't just a school, it was a massive research engine. We're talking teachers, students, outside collaborators, admin staff, a whole network. Aristotle wasn't just a philosopher thinking deep thoughts. He was more like the director of a research lab, a manager who was incredible at organizing people to go out and investigate the world. And this changes everything. It means the texts that survived, the things we call his books, were never meant to be polished, final products for the public. They were internal documents, think lecture notes, research outlines, and rough drafts for his team. One of the best ways to think about a work like Metaphysics is that it wasn't a book of answers. It was more like an orientation packet for a new researcher joining the Lyceum. It was a toolkit designed to teach you how to start asking questions, not to give you the final word. Okay, so if his writings were just a bunch of internal notes, what happened to them when he died? This is where our mystery gets really interesting. Because now we have a motive, and we're about to find the opportunity, a 200-year gap where anything could have happened. Just look at this timeline. It's wild. Aristotle dies in 322 BCE, and his manuscripts, all these messy notes, get stashed away in a private collection. For over 200 years, they're basically lost to the world. They're vulnerable. They're unread. It's not until around 60 BCE that they're found, brought to Rome, and edited into the books we have today for the very first time. That massive gap is the crime scene. So that brings us to our main suspects, the editors, the people who found these scattered notes and stitched them together. We've got the opportunity, that 200-year gap. Now let's look at the motive. What were they trying to do? Well, you have to understand the intellectual fashion of the time. These editors in the 1st century BCE were part of a movement we now call Middle Platonism. Their big project wasn't just to preserve Aristotle's work, it was to harmonize it with Plato's work, to mash them together into one big, beautiful, unified philosophical system. But they had a huge problem. To get Aristotle to fit into their grand system, his philosophy was missing a critical piece. Think about it. Aristotle's whole method was bottom-up, science-y, looking at the world. It didn't have a big theological finale. To make it fit with Plato, his philosophical house needed a roof, a single, divine, overarching principle to put on top and make the whole thing complete. And what did they find in that pile of notes that was the perfect, ready-made roof? You guessed it. The unmoved mover theory, that weird, out-of-place, Plato-sounding section was the exact theological capstone they needed to finish their project. It fit perfectly. And the ripple effects of this one editorial choice were absolutely massive. The unmoved mover was almost immediately identified with the single God of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Suddenly, Aristotle's system became the philosophical foundation for all of medieval theology. And just like that, the guy who was basically a research director got turned into the ultimate authority on the nature of God himself. So, when you put all the pieces together, the weird text, the real story of who Aristotle was, the 200-year gap, and the editor's clear motive, a completely different picture of Aristotle starts to emerge. So, the myth is Aristotle, the philosopher of the cosmos, the guy who came up with this grand but kind of dated theological system. But the reality? The reality is maybe even more impressive. He was an underrated architect of research. His real genius wasn't in having a final answer, but in creating a system where people could work together to keep asking new questions forever. And that leaves us with this one final nagging question. When we read that hugely influential chapter on the unmoved mover, the one that shaped centuries of religion and philosophy, who are we really reading? Is it Aristotle, the research manager who loved open-ended questions? Or is it his editors, who came along 2 centuries later and decided his life's work just needed a nice, tidy theological roof?
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.